Welcome back to Veterans Forum, a program by veterans, about veterans, for veterans and their families. I'm your co-host Bob West with Ray Chattery and Jerry Devlin. Our goal is to provide important information to you and your family about legislation, benefits, support, and activities by interviewing leaders in our community. Jerry, who do we have with us today?
We're really honored today. We have a special guest, and as we all know and our regular viewers know, one of the goals of Veterans Forum is to encourage and recruit women members of the various For Veterans organizations here in Bowie. And tonight we're really honored to have a super veteran, a 30-year veteran who has done just about everything that a woman could have done in this 30 years. Colonel Marilyn Wills is a graduate of one of my favorite schools, Grambling. Somehow I remember Eddie Robinson being coached.
Absolutely.
Eddie was coached there for about 100 years.
There you are.
And
That's
produced
right.
just endless star after star in the National Football League. Well, Colonel Wills is a graduate of Grambling in the state, which is located in Grambling, Louisiana. She has a master's degree from here in Bowie, and she has a PhD in humane letters from Grambling. And then she has all kinds of military schools she's attended to. And if we extended the show to perhaps an hour and a half, we might list some of them. Also, she has a long list of military decorations that again would stretch from here to here. And among them, of course, she has a Bronze Star, she has a Purple Heart, and just about, and she's done so many things in the service. I wish we could have a whole show just discussing her assignments. She was adjutant at the United States Military Academy at West Point. She was Provost Marshal over at Fort Myer over here and with the 3rd Regiment over here in Virginia, and just everything else. A 30-year credit success from beginning to end. And I think everybody from Grambling, Louisiana to Bowie, Maryland is very proud of our own Colonel Marilyn Wills, who lives here, of course, in Mitchellville.
Welcome, Colonel Mills.
Wills.
Wills.
Yes,
Sorry.
thank you.
One of the things is most of our viewers are veterans or their families. And as a woman veteran, there typically isn't very many of them initially. So why don't you tell us why you joined the Army to begin with?
Okay. Actually, I joined the Army. I worked in ROTC in college. And at some point, I did not know what I wanted to do in my life. And working in ROTC, they say, come on and try it out. I always knew I wanted to be a leader, but not necessarily in the Army. And so I did. I tried it out, and I absolutely fell in love with the Army. And got my commission from Grambling, and here I am 30 years later. Enjoyed every day of it.
And you were primarily in the criminal justice system within the Army.
Well, yes. My degree from school is criminal justice, and I was a military police officer, not in the criminal justice system, but I was a military police officer in the Army. That's correct.
And what drew you to criminal justice?
Yes. Again, while I was in college, I knew I wanted to work with criminals, period. And the closest I could get to it in the Army was to be a military police officer. So I wanted to be a part of that system to help people and also support and protect people.
How did you find that career in the Army as far from a woman's perspective?
Yeah, initially I wanted to be a policeman, to ride in the car and carry my nightstick and do those type things. But as an officer in the Army, it was a little different for me for that. I was a leader in charge of those men and women who did in fact carry the weapon and the nightstick and work those shifts. Not saying that I didn't, I did, but that was their responsibility. My responsibility was to lead those men and women to make sure they were doing their job correctly.
Now in the Air Force, we actually separated law enforcement from base security.
It's all the same in the Army.
Okay.
Law enforcement and security belongs to the military police officers on military posts.
Okay, and so as an officer, you were responsible for both activities.
That's right, for law enforcement, for physical security, for personal security, and everything that comes with it. That's correct.
And you stuck with it for 30 years.
Yes.
So what? Now that's another point. Many people go into the service, they do one tour, and they get out. What encouraged you to stay?
Bob, that's a very good question, especially for women veterans, for women members. Right about the captain's time frame, there is a choice to be made. A lot of us want families. We want to have children and go on and have our life. But I found out that I could do them both. I had great leaders that I worked for who showed me that I could do both. There was a female colonel I worked for. I had never met a colonel until I saw her. And she told me, you can do both. So at that point, I decided to stick with it. At the 10-year mark, I had to make a decision. My husband was also military. And we had one child at this point. And so now here is the struggle. Do I continue to be a soldier, a leader in the Army? Do I just go ahead and get out and be a mom? I loved the Army too much. Now, there were a lot of sacrifices that I had to make from being a mom, but it was something I wanted to do, and I stuck to it. There were, and I'll just talk a little more on this, there were 3 women in my military police basic course. I was the only one who stayed 30 years. The other ones decided to make the decision to go on and have families and get out of the Army. We're still in contact with each other, but I was the only one to stick it out.
Well, that's one thing about the military. You usually do stay in contact
Yes.
with some of your friends that you served with. Because both you and your husband were on active duty,
Yes.
there's always that deployment issue.
Yes.
How did you find that situation?
Very difficult. And my husband was an armor officer, and we were both in Germany when Desert Storm 1 happened. His unit was called up to go. And so that left me, I was a commander, commanding a military police company with a daughter. I had to send my daughter back to my mom so that I can, in fact, be a soldier. And he can go off to Iraq and do what he had to do in Iraq and Kuwait.
You have 2 daughters, Portia and Priscilla, I read, but how old were they then, Colonel?
Right. I didn't have Priscilla at the time, but Portia was 2 years old.
Just a baby, really.
She was a baby, yes. And so you had to have that family care plan. I gave her to one of my neighbors who, in fact, brought her back to the United States to stay with my parents.
So you had your A and B bags ready and all that kind of stuff
Ready at
over
all
there?
times, that's right.
Okay,
That's
yeah. We were stationed in Germany also, and my wife was a civilian. But yeah, we had to have an A and B bag ready and go through the exercises and that sort of thing.
And it's a great thing that we do have those women who are spouses, because it was a spouse who helped me out, who got my daughter back to my mom safely, someone that I could trust. And so it's wonderful to have those
Under
spouses
ordinary
over there.
conditions, not like, say, Iraq then or later, did the Army make efforts to keep you and your husband together? Would they try to accommodate that as much as they could?
They do try. It's called the Joint Domicile Program.
Right.
And while we were in Germany, we stayed in the same household for maybe 6 months. And after that, my husband went in one location and we'd meet back at the same place. Or I ran a house and he ran a house separately. But they really, really do try to make those accommodations.
Do you think you seem to have a lot of support from the people you worked for as you were going through the ranks at various career points? It seems we hear a lot of grumbling, which is common among all us veterans. We're not happy unless we're grumbling. But some folks seem to feel that they didn't get the support system that they had anticipated. Your experience appears to be totally different.
It is. You have to go out and meet people. And the Army, and I would have to say the military, because I've been joint, and so I've worked with other service members. They want to support our veterans. But it's something that you as a veteran have to go out and seek. A lot of people won't go out and seek that. They will try to do it themselves. But you can't live your life by yourself. It's a community. And that is what we had in Germany and all those other locations that we've been stationed.
Now, Ray, you spent 30 years in the Marine Corps.
Yes. Not quite.
And about that time, huh? And your wife moved around with you when?
Well, I'm a very fortunate Marine in that my wife only went on one deployment to Camp Lejeune. and that's where my daughter was born. When we got transferred back here in 1961, when I went on recruiting tour, that was pre-Vietnam, my family never left Prince George's County. I was on recruiting, then I went to Vietnam and came back to Washington. Then I went to Japan and come back to Washington. So I spent 15 of my 20 years in Washington, which was
Really unusual.
Was Fleet Reserve, which was very. And the reason why they do that is no one wants to come to Washington. So when the Marine Corps said he wants to go back to Washington, send him.
Yes.
And not only that, look at the money they saved on not moving.
That's correct.
So, but the Vietnam tour was very, very difficult with the family because my son was only 16 months old when I left, and I was gone half of his life. And so the spouses, when they were here, and say it was difficult for the wife with 3 kids. So the spouse, like you say, the spouse support is a very big part of the program.
So you spent a considerable amount of your career here in the Washington area?
Well, we moved around by having this joint domicile program. The first part of my career was to go with my husband because he's armor and you don't have tanks everywhere, but you do have military police everywhere. And so as we continued in rank, then Washington was the best place for us because both of our branches could serve here.
Yeah, everybody has to serve at the Puzzle Palace.
Everyone has to get that tour.
That's right. And it's kind of interesting listening to the two of you because the Air Force is the same way. If you want to come to Washington, there's no trouble.
That's right.
Because I did the same thing. I spent over 6 years here, and I wanted to extend, and they said, no, you got to get out of town. And I found Dayton, Ohio as the closest, so my wife stayed here, so I did a commute every few weeks back and forth. And as soon as I got there, I said, I want to go back to Washington, D.C., and they said, no problem.
Right.
You know, so actually, it only, it actually ended up about 2 years, a little over 2 years in Ohio, and came right back. So it's kind of a similar situation.
You were also in Vietnam, though.
Oh yeah, that was a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was a long time ago. A different kind of a situation. So you had a successful career, Military Order of the Purple Heart. You know, you're rare in that instance. Can you tell us just a little bit about that?
Of course, as veterans sitting here, we all know that is one medal that none of us really want. Unfortunately, the circumstances that happened on September 11th led to me receiving the Purple Heart. We all know where we were that day, and that day for me was right where the plane came in. I was injured pretty bad. I may look fine today, but years have passed from that. So that's how I received the Purple Heart. And from that, I am a member of the Military Order of the Purple Heart, which only has one female, and that's me in the chapter that's here in Prince George's County.
Well, we all are part of the Joint Veterans Commission.
Yes, that's
and
correct.
Military Order of Purple Heart is one of the member organizations.
That's correct.
And as one of their members said, it's the only certificate you can get from the enemy or something like
Right.
that.
Yes,
That's
by the
what they
enemy.
said. Yes. And we'll be starting that up again soon.
Very
September
soon,
19th.
September
19th. We
19th.
meet the third Wednesday of the month. We meet here in Bowie at the DAV Chapter 7 on Route 197.
Right, I'm the representative from the Military Purple Heart, so I have been to the JAV before.
Yeah, who came in as commander for the Purple Heart this year? State commander.
You know, I'm not sure. It's just slipping my mind right now.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's pretty good. So
Yeah.
we encourage as many people as possible to come. So you had a very active career,
Yes.
30 years. And so, like many of us, we got out, and we usually stop off at the VA to kind of check in. So, how was that experience? Because we've been hearing so many negative stories recently.
Yeah, you know, as an active duty member for 30 years, never had to go to the VA. All medical has been on military installations. And to be told to go to the VA, initially I was concerned. I was concerned because of what we have been hearing in the news about the VA. And this was a year ago, even we were hearing bad things about it then. But when I went to the VA for my, we call the Army final out appointments, I had absolutely no problems at all. I was surprised that I called. Within the week, I was given an appointment. Within the second week, I saw the doctor. And after that, all the paperwork started flowing. I was really shocked and surprised that I got through the VA system that quickly. Talking to some of my friends now who are also retiring, my recommendations to them is to start early. I started a bit late because as an old colonel, I thought I had to stay here and do it all before I got out of the Army. But as I'm telling them now, go to the VA early. And I've been...
How early for our viewers?
For how early? I would almost say a year out. They can go to the VA a year out and start making appointments for their final out of the Army, so that they can see that the VA is really interested in our well-being. They really are, and I saw that firsthand.
And did you go to the Washington VA?
I did. I went to the Washington VA.
And so from that standpoint, you had an excellent experience.
Yes.
Just switching back quickly to your active duty time, we hear these stories about some issues that in sexual harassment and that sort of thing
Yes.
in the military.
Yes.
Did you experience that, or?
Right now, it's military sexual assault and military sexual trauma are the I hate to call them buzzwords, but even when I came in, there was no such thing. It was sexual harassment.
Right.
And it has escalated past that in the Army now. And yes, there is a big issue with sexual assault and military sexual trauma. When I came in the Army, was I sexually harassed? Yes, I was. How did I handle it? How did I deal with it? I knew there was a chaplain. Had never heard of an inspector general because I was a young officer, but I knew of a chaplain. So I went and talked to the chaplain. And the chaplain talked me through, because I was new to the Army. Who else was I going to turn to? I'm in a military police unit with nothing but males. I'm the only female. But today, as the inspector general in Afghanistan 2 years ago, there is a big issue with military sexual assault and sexual trauma for both males and females. So I investigated both. And the military has to do something about it. There is no reason we should have any type issue like that on our fellow soldiers, sailors, airmen, or Marines. So there are some issues out there that the military is going to have to face.
And they're slowly dealing with it.
They're
as
slowly
we know.
dealing with it. That's correct.
So you got out and you went to the VA, and you looked around for some service organizations and you joined.
Yes, that's right.
Why-
and I think it's
why did you do
important
that?
for our veterans to join when you get out. You know, as I was sharing with a member earlier, we don't know that we could join these organizations while we're in the military, while you're currently serving. You can join these organizations. But I thought it important to give back to our community, also give back to our service members. Let them know that we are concerned with our benefits. We are concerned with everything that was promised to us as veterans. And it's important that we stay with these organizations so that we can lobby Congress and tell Congress, don't touch with our retirement. There's an issue going on in Maryland with retirement pay. And it's something that I know the veteran organizations are dealing with.
As we try to see, as we reach out, we're finding young people like you coming into the association and organizations. How can we get more younger people interested in stopping by to find out about the benefits? Because that's basically what we're there for, is to help them get signed up and get the benefits they've earned. But trying to get them in the door, we're having a very difficult time on outreach and getting their attention.
Yeah, you know, I will tell you as a veteran that's been out 1 year, when you walk into those doors, I would tell you initially you're intimidated because all you see are the graybeards. We know that you have served your country well, and that's just one of those terms we
Absolutely.
call it.
Yeah, that's fine.
Military,
Yes.
the graybeards. We know you've served your country well, and then we don't know if we are up to par with what you gentlemen have done. And I have to say gentlemen because there's very few women there. We don't know if we're up to par to what you've done. But the question is, how can you get them involved? I think the retirement officers in the military can help you out with that. The transition officers, get to those transition officers. Get on the platform to talk to those service members and give them documentation to show them. You can come join these organizations today. This is what we're doing. Before I left the Army, I didn't know what the Army League was doing. I didn't know what the veteran leagues were doing. I didn't have a clue because I was so focused on the active duty, not thinking I was going to get out of that thing quite yet. But I think it's important, get with the retirement office and get with the transition office.
This is very special to us. Prince George's County has the largest number of veterans of any
That's correct.
jurisdiction in the state. And we have an African American majority county. We really need to bring in persons of color and women. I mean, that's all of you people out there who happen to be watching Bowie Cable. This is a top priority with all 4 veterans organizations. Yeah, to see just a bunch of old white guys, you know, this is even though we are old white guys, is kind of disappointing to us. I mean, that's, you know, in the future, you know, I was doing some family genealogy, and I was looking at the Civil War veterans, and my great-grandmother's brother was a veteran, and I had a cousin who was wounded at Bull Run. And then you look at the Veterans Organization was the Grand Army of the Republic, and I went through all the records, and every chapter has this grim, you know, the charter was surrendered August 7th, 1927, when the last member died, and so forth. And we're not quite that bad, but you go to the conventions of all of the organizations, and if somebody has black hair, it's either a toupee or usually a wig or a Grecian formula. But we really desperately need younger people. We need more women, and we need especially persons of color. You know, and both African Americans and a great many Asians. You know, so, and Latinos. You know, we don't. You know, and if you go to the Veterans Hospital, you see all of these groups are overrepresented. You know, for those who are paying.
One thing that's really good is that it wasn't last month, but the month before, we had an African American soldier, a female, come in, and she was seeing what DAV. I'm the commander of DAV here in Bowie, and I said, "Ma'am, I need a chaplain. So as soon as your application is approved, please be my chaplain." And I may have scared her away, but I mean, that's how we really in Bowie, the VFW and the Marine Corps League and the DAV, we really welcome the female veteran, and I think in a way they may be overwhelmed by that, you know.
Well, you know, I was going to say, Ray, do exactly what you did.
Right.
When they come in, welcome and put them to work.
Right.
Because we're so used to working.
Right.
But you bring us to the organization and we sit in the back. Yeah. You don't know what we can bring to the table. Right. Put us to work right then.
Right.
That's exactly what we're doing in the Purple Heart. Put Marilyn Wills to work. Now that you have her, you let her sit in the back. It's like, okay, things will always be the same. We don't know if you're ever going to take my suggestions.
And there's a special pertinence to the DAV. All of us are, you know, multi-organization, but the DAV, more than any other organization, exists for the purpose of getting benefits for those who deserve them. For example, if you go to the National Convention, I think it's the only national convention that has no social activities. It's all business. And we have, you know, we have trained service officers, and I mean, anybody who's been in the service is probably eligible for the DAV. I mean, the people. For years, I lived here, and I was in the legislature, and I thought you had to be like my senator lost his arm at Heartbreak Ridge, and my campaign manager lost both of his legs in Vietnam, and I kind of thought that was what you had to do. Whereas the DAV, basically, if you've been to sick bay at any time in your career, you're eligible. And so but there's just, we've had people come who joined sort of a social one. One of our members was in the Marine Corps League, and the DAV tends to be the Marine Corps League, changing hats. Well, that's following, and he said he just came because the other guys were in it, and he ended up with a 40% of, they had McDonald, 40 or 50% disability, and became the service officer.
Right. Now, you remember the DAV?
I am.
Okay, good.
Yes.
What, 17?
No.
Well, you're a
it's-
Mitchell, but we got to get you transferred to Chapter 7.
I need to transfer to 7
transfer
because
to
I'm in
Chapter 7.
Greenbelt.
Well-
I'm in the one in Green. Okay.
Oh,
I need to
no.
transfer.
Well, they
They're folded.
they
They're
folded.
folded.
23.
yes.
They
No,
folded.
we'll get you out of the.
Okay.
We'll get you out of the at-large chapter, and we'll
have
get you
internal
transferred
problems.
to Chapter 7.
Okay.
You heard it here first.
Yep.
Absolutely.
No, really, because
And see, that's good information to know.
right,
Yeah.
because the Purple Heart, you're automatically eligible.
Absolutely.
If you've been gassed, you've been eligible automatically. And that's a big contention.
That's what
for
a friend
us
of mine
being
said with
gassed.
our vice commander, and he said, actually, if you went through boot camp, you're eligible.
Yeah, because we all gas you.
Sure, but
Everybody was
it really
gassed in
came
boot
from,
camp.
it came from people like my father who was gassed in the Argonne. That was what they meant, but they never said that. They didn't say, who gassed you? So you go through boot camp and you go into that little
That's
room,
right.
you take your mask off, you've just been gassed.
There you are.
There's
That's
your
right.
DAV membership.
You know, it's kind of hard to believe, but our 30 minutes is up already. We want to thank Colonel Wills for being here. And you need to take her advice, which is basically you have to get out there and get active. You have to find out what's going on. And if you stop by one of the service organizations, you know, we're more than happy to fill you in and, as she says, you know, get to work. So we hope you've enjoyed the program and learned important information useful to you and your family. Now we ask you to get involved with your fellow veterans here in Bowie by stopping by the American Legion or the DAV. Find out about your benefits. If you're a family member, you want to stop by also and encourage your veteran to get on with the programs that are available to them. As you will see on the screen, the phone numbers for all of the organizations will appear. Feel free to call at any time. And also, we want to thank Tom Allen as our director tonight, and cameraman, and all-around crew chief. And we also want to thank you very much for watching Veterans Forum. Please stop by and find out about your benefits. Thank you for watching.